Okay, ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, welcome back to the channel. This is General Patton's Bushcraft and Self-Reliance School, back with you tonight. I'm still stoked. This is the recap for Alone Season 8. And this one is Episode 6. And the title of this one is Smoked. So let's get right into it. Alright, this is day 22 now. 6 people remain. And the show starts with Clay. We finally get to see that footage of him shooting that buck. Trailing it with the trail of blood. Broken, we see the broken arrow. We see that buck drops right there. Oh my goodness. As Clay tells it's a huge weight lifted off his shoulders. Good on Clay. We see him clean that thing and he says, back straps for tonight. Quarters it and he starts hauling that thing back to the shelter. We find out it was 2.5 miles away where he shot that buck. Alright, day 22 still, and then the show moves over to Coulter. Coulter gives us a close-up of his beard, tells us he's not seeing any deer sign, so he concentrates on fishing. He gets in that real nice boat that he made with the outriggers, but before that he goes to foraging, and he tells us that he picks 100 onions, some rose hips, and some cranberries every morning. He's just been foraging up till now, and he's got that cranberry hole. He says those cranberries have been in that hole for 3 weeks and they're still good. Alright, he says he loves this business of sitting on his ass and picking onions and cranberries. He says he's gonna keep doing it. Alright, the show moves on to Nate now. Nate, he gives us a close-up of that skull. That Cro-Magnon man skull with that brow line, those cheekbones. It's kind of funny. And he says, trust me, it's a tough skull. Alright, moving on. Nate goes down to his pier, checks his fish line. Says he misses his family. He says he did not have a dad coming up. He's got a big fish on the line, and he gets it all the way up about 5-6 feet from the shoreline, and he loses this big huge fish. Oh, ugh for Nate. He said that it was barely hooked on its nose. Actually, Nate jumps in the water a little bit, gets his boot, gets his jacket wet. Oh man, he resets his line out there in the water. Day 22 now. Still day 22, goes back to Clay. Clay finishes the last load back to the camp. Says a buck load was just, a big load was just lifted off his shoulders, he says. He says he's going to go to work eventually and cutting that into strips and smoking it. But he uses that big old rope that they give all the contestants to hang the meat up at least 8 feet in the air away from the bears. So we get to see Clay hang his meat. Later that night in his shelter, he cooks that heart in some buck fat. And boy, does he say that it tastes good. Okay, day 23 now. Show goes back to Coulter. He wakes up, we see him waking up to some wind, some rain, and a little bit of snow, so he decides to work on fishing. The local hunting regulations there says does not allow for gill nets until day 45, and we're only on day 23 right here. So on the way to the lake, he was going to stop by Cranberry Hole, and wow, he finds out something big was at his fire pit And his cranberry hole ate almost all of his cranberries. Looked like it was a big bear. So Coulter works on a fish trap, and man, he makes a nice one, a big one. All right, the show moves on to Teresa. We see her wake into the same rain. She wants desperately to move into the pit house, so she goes over there and tries a fire in there, and it's way too smoky. So good on Teresa before trying that fire before she moved in there. So she tears down half the wall and excuse me, she says she's gonna rebuild a rock chimney. So good on Teresa. All right, show goes back to Nate. Nate starts his day off with some hot water, pretends like it's hot water coffee, and then he goes works on a remedy for losing that big fish that he lost the day before. So he goes and he builds himself a real nice fish net. And the show tells us that Nate has not had any meat in 6 days up at this point, and that he's lost 35 pounds since day one. All right, we see Nate go back out here and check his fishing line, and wow, this is crazy. He has that net that he just made. He pulls in, he thinks what's gonna be this big old fish. He feels it, he gets it in. It's a little 12-inch rainbow that was in the mouth of a big bull trout. So good on Nate. At least he got that little fish, and he shows us the teeth marks in that little fish. So good on Nate. All right, now day 23, 6 people still remain, and the show goes back to Clay. Clay works on building a real sweet smoker. He puts these bunch of lines inside this big old log, probably 6-8 inch logs he makes this smoker out of, right? It's about waist high, maybe chest high, you know, 4 feet high, maybe 5 feet long. Yeah, we get to see Clay build that sweet smoker with the buck's head up on top and all these rows stripped out of strips of meat where he smokes that meat. Man, it looks cool. So good on Clay. Day 24 now. The show goes back to Nate. Uh-oh. He tells us he may have accidentally drank some squirrel poo. He says that during the rain last night, he left his pot outside with the lid off, and he collected about 2 inches of water, he said. When he took the first drink, still kind of dark, and then he remembers he could have swore there were 2 squirrel turds in that water. And so hopefully he's worried about getting sick. And so he works on a real sweet fishing pole to go with that net that he's already made. And he's desperately says that he needs to start catching fish. He knows he's losing weight. He shows us his belt, his stomach line. He misses his family. And then, oh my goodness, later that afternoon he feels sick. Oh my goodness, gets the shakes, vomiting violently, and he taps out. Nate taps out. Day 25 now, 5 people remain. And we find the show goes back to Biko, and Biko reads his personal rules list. There's like 4 or 5 of them, but the last one is don't push the effing tap button. Biko has lost 50 pounds up to this point. Checks his fish basket, nothing. So he goes back to lure fishing. Biko catches a real nice little rainbow. Good on Biko. Cooks and eats it And real funny part of the show, Biko gives tribute to his dad, right? And tells a story that his dad taught him when he was a boy. Used to scare the crap out of him, but he said that his dad used to say, yell, "Let me see!" And then he would suck the eyes out of the fish. So that's what Biko just did. It was real funny. All right, day 25. Now the show goes to Teresa. We see Teresa. She washes her hair in some cold water and pushes to finish the fireplace, that rock fireplace. She tells us that she's a bit of a controlled OCD, and she builds a real nice rock fireplace. She gets it finished, and she builds a fire in it. The smoke seems to be doing pretty good, so she goes ahead and decides to move in the pit house. So good on Teresa. She has a fire in there, and it's working pretty good. So good on Teresa. All right, day 26 now. 5 people remain, and the show goes to Rose. Rose tells us about the wind, and the wind has just been blasting, keeping her cold in the shelter. She wants to finish the door, so she found some rusty nails. She makes a pretty nice little triangle shaped door to finally button up her shelter. Looks pretty decent, so good on Rose. Now the show moves on to Clay. We see Clay sitting on this rock, and he shows us this awesome rainbow, man, and he gets pretty sentimental. You know, he says he could almost reach out and touch the rainbow, and he asks, you know, what has he done to deserve this? So pretty cool moment. And then he says, hopefully there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Good on Clay. Okay, then the show concludes 4 days after the tap out. They give us that interview with Nate. So 5 people remain now, and I'll let you guys go back and watch that show and listen to Nate's interview. Cool dude. So 5 people remain now, and I want to thank you guys for stopping by the channel, checking out episode 6 recap called Smoked. This is General Pat's Bushcraft Self-Reliance School, and I want you to share and please subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.